Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Bearable Bull here. And I got this aggressively average content for you today. As ladies and gentlemen, today we saw Apex really flex their muscles for the XRP community. And right now, I'm going to post something for every single one of you to stay the course and pay attention. The Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse confirmed today, the day the XRP case ends. But first, Brad Garlinghouse and David Schwartz both discuss how the XRP army will make generational wealth and when that's going to happen. It's going to happen once the user interface and user experience is seamless. Ladies and gentlemen, we already have the internet. The internet took decades to adopt. We now have the smartphone. The smartphone took about a decade to adopt. And here we have digital money. This is the combination of the internet, the smartphone, and the addiction that modern society has to this technology, now transforming into the digital money economy. Everything will be tokenized, but the user experience is still clunky, and it's still only really conducive for millennials and Gen Z. As soon as the boomers and the older generations are able to use this technology seamlessly, the opportunity to make life-changing wealth is over. We are not quite there yet. It's still clunky to use crypto, but I promise you, with XRP being used behind the scenes, everything will become easier. And we're fast approaching a moment where the entire crypto market is about to blow.
I was listening to your talk this morning, obviously, as we all were, and I'm curious to get both of your take on how mass adoption occurs. Obviously, I think one component is going to be making this stuff easier to use. Yeah. I think the fact that Iggy Azalea followed me on Twitter this morning is a good sign for mass adoption. But what else is it going to take?
Well, user experience is super critical. You can't, if you have to understand the technology in order to get it to work, there was a time when you had to understand cars to drive a car. You had to understand copying machines to have a copying machine. We have to turn that corner. But I think the other thing is that we need products that meet needs that real people actually have. One of the things that I mentioned in my talk is, like, for most of us, we're very well connected to the financial system, and getting money into and out of a blockchain is not difficult for us. But if you're someone who, doesn't have a whole bunch of money that you can just, send off and not be able to get to for a while, on-ramps and off-ramps are critical, interoperability, like all of those things. But really what it comes down to is just the user experience has to be great, and it has to solve a problem people actually have. It can't just be interesting. It's like, oh, it's really cool that it can do this thing, right? It has to solve a problem people actually have.
Mm. One of the things David also talked about on stage earlier today is he had been around in the earliest days of the internet, kind of the internet 1.0. I'm a lot younger than him, but I also was around. Why is that funny?
I don't know. I thought that was
Frank. Shots fired. I was around those days as well, and I think one of the things that really catalyzed the growth of kind of the internet 1.0 was usability. Yeah. Mosaic came out as a first browser that evolved into Netscape. That trying to use some of these technologies that predated the browser as we know it. I mean, people can't even think about the internet before a browser. Mm-hmm. But those things didn't exist until, I think, 92, 93. Mm-hmm. That was the explosive growth. And so I think, again, when I think about the big picture where we're going over the next 5 years, 10 years, I think we are now focused on abstraction layers that can actually, we don't need to know how the technology works. We don't need to know how SMTP works to send an email. Mm-hmm. Why do we need to know how to do things with core layer 1 technologies in order to take advantage of them?
And that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, we definitely don't. We don't need this, nor do we really want it. A lot of us in the XRP space, we know so much of the underlying banking system and how this technology works. But quite frankly, It is the most boring information you could ever research or process, maybe in the world. So for that is why we are the new 1% here before the mass majority of people. But because we took the time to do all of this, that is why we have the opportunity to gain generational wealth before the masses, enter the floodgates, and use this technology easily. Another big reason why we haven't reached mass adoption specifically for XRP yet is because of the quicksand the SEC lawsuit has been on Ripple and XRP adoption. But now, here finally, Brad Garlinghouse gives his final prediction for when this SEC lawsuit will end. And I think that is when XRP itself will be unshackled in its totality. I believe he gives a hint as towards July. But then also comically says that summer ends September 21st. You can tell in this video that both Brad and David Schwartz have had it with this lawsuit. But I think you can also tell that they believe they've almost won.
Look, I think as you reflect on the last handful of years, we'll call it 4 or 5 years, there are things that are super frustrating. You know, why did the SEC go after XRP kind of first, if you will? You know, in some ways you look at that now and you say, we're almost at the very, very end of that journey. I think that, you know, hopefully we have resolution. We can't control that now. The judge, you know, will make the decision when she makes the decision. My estimation is sometime before the end of the summer. Somebody asked me, is that the end of August? I pointed out that September 21st is the end of summer. So I don't know, sometime there.
I think my birthday, August 28th, that's the end of summer.
You know what? I'll ask her if we can celebrate your birthday with that. That would be,
yeah.
We'll all celebrate with you.
We'll call the judge.
But look, it has been frustrating. What has been exciting is the momentum that has been building. I mean, look, there are 3 times as many people here as the last Apex. This community is more active, more vibrant, more entrepreneurial. I mean, it's just awesome. Like I see the momentum and the excitement here, and it's just very palpable. The U.S. market remains, frankly, a laggard. You know, the U.S. regulatory environment, even though Ripple is at the tail end of that, and I think it's strange to me that XRP is in such a unique position and that the market hasn't kind of rewarded that. XRP in the US is one of the few things we can say definitively is not a security. With ETH, I don't know how that's going to play out, right? Apparently Wells notices, which is the SEC kind of pre-warning that we're going to file a lawsuit, have been gone out to consensus, well, purportedly, as I've read, maybe on your side as well, to consensus. You know, we know the Ethereum Foundation has received various inquiries. So look, it's super frustrating. And even it's not just the SEC. The United States kind of current administration with Gary Gensler as the head of the SEC has been pretty hostile towards crypto. But look, you asked the macro question. That has been frustrating. I think we're on the largely on the other side of that. And it's the reason why I'm so excited. And hearing David talk about what's going on in the XRP ledger, I look at the next 5 years and what this community may look like 5 years from now, and I get very excited about it.
And guys, at the end of the day, that is what's most important. The development on the XRP ledger and with Apex happening right now is phenomenal. And we are having the macro crypto environment that will be conducive for a life-changing XRP bull run. Fed Chair Jerome Powell spoke at the FOMC meeting. Rates are staying the same. But I do have to remind all of you that rate cuts in Canada, the EU, and now Denmark have all occurred. And I do believe there will be a moment in time where America is going to see rate cuts in short order. Likely because of a black swan event similar to what happened in 2020 with C19. There will be a random event that makes this forced to happen, especially during an election year. Especially as they're announcing that they believe 63 banks are going to fail. I doubt that they can let all of this happen without cutting rates during an election year and making quantitative easing prop up the economy a little longer. But the show must go on. Here, we have to see that Russia is also making moves, as the Russia Stock Exchange has officially halted trading in US dollars and euros. Currency wars are heightening, and that's important to note as Russia is positioning themselves in Cuba, as Cold War Cuban Missile Crisis vibes are in the air. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a very important time to keep the geopolitical events at play in the back of your minds to see how it all correlates together. As in addition, a seismic event of Saudi Arabia's petrodollar exit occurring at the same time is happening. Remember, Saudi Arabia is part of the BRICS nations, and the pivot away from the US dollar in these currency wars are reaching a global climax. I do believe there will be a moment in time where everything comes full steam ahead, and XRP will be at the heart of a global solution to this entire currency problem. The tokenization of assets, as well as on-demand liquidity, and XRP's FX capabilities will help the world break out of this in some way, shape, or form. But right now, something I do want to remind all of you of is David Schwartz talking institutional DeFi and innovations at Consensus 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to break down in the coming days, and this is only the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Bearable Bull here. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. Now I'll be back tomorrow with another video.
Hey everyone, it's Rachel Wolfson here at Consensus 2024 in Austin, Texas, and I'm so excited to be interviewing the one and only David Schwartz. He is the CTO of Ripple. He needs no introduction, so let's get right to the interview. So David, first and foremost, what are your thoughts on Consensus?
It's always an amazing conference. It's great to see all the business people and developers, talking to each other. It's a little hard for me to cross the room sometimes. I get a lot of people who want to talk to me. So, but it is amazing. The energy has been fantastic.
Yeah. So Ripple recently announced a institutional DeFi development. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's kind of like our vision for how you can have institutions that have regulatory compliance issues that can operate on decentralized blockchains that are censorship resistant and have no governance functions. They can still meet their regulatory compliance objectives and not be islands that can't interoperate with like real DeFi ecosystems where there's people who may have anonymous accounts or they may be unbanked or not. It's a way to have all those two ecosystems work together.
Okay, can you explain a little bit more about what the new developments are exactly?
Well, so a good example is Ripple launching a stablecoin. So the stablecoin is regulated. It's launched pursuant to licensing that Ripple has. It's one-to-one backed with US dollars. And Ripple has to go through, know your customer and anti-money laundering for any time we issue or redeem. But people will be able to obtain the stablecoin like on DEXs and, through exchanges, and they may be able to transact with it in DeFi applications that are censorship resistant and, that are decentralized. And the vision is more products like that. So another example would be real-world asset tokenization, where these are regulatory compliant products that are securities on blockchains, but they can be used as collateral in DeFi protocols. So and someone is lending you money against that stock. And the stock is provided by a regulatory compliance system, but the lending system is a DeFi application. So it's this idea of bridging regulatory compliant institutional use cases with these DeFi use cases that can't really be tied to a jurisdiction, can't really be tied to those strict regulatory compliance policies in ways that all work together on a public blockchain like the XRP.
So are any institutions utilizing this just yet?
There are a lot of stablecoin's a good example. There are many stablecoins that are issued in just this way. There are a lot of tokenized securities today that are available. There's like tokenized U.S. Treasuries. There are some companies working, Zonix, for example, one of our partners is working on tokenizing real-world assets. So it's happening gradually.
When you say tokenizing real-world assets, can you be a little bit more specific? Are there specific assets that Ripple is focusing on when it comes to tokenization?
Well, obviously, the stablecoin tokenized is a U.S. dollar, which is a real-world asset, right? There'll be treasuries, or there'll be like literal U.S. dollars, one-for-one backing it. With these securities, there may be specifically treasuries where there's a yield that's delivered to the holder through a regulated product, where the holders probably can't be anonymous; they have to onboard. But those things will still be connected to DeFi applications.
Got it. Okay. Does the Ripple stablecoin have a name yet?
We will be announcing that at Apex.
Okay. Good to know. Any other new developments that you spoke about here at Consensus, or anything that we need to know about?
Well, we've announced a couple of other strategies for the XRP ledger. One of them is oracles, which are another example. Like the oracles themselves tend to be regulated institutions. Some of them are DeFi projects, but they enable DeFi applications that are sort of jurisdictionless, like collateralized lending. You can't do collateralized lending if you don't know the value of the collateral. We've also started to talk about a proposal for what we call multi-purpose tokens, which are, so the XRP ledger has fungible tokens that are great for things like stablecoins, and it has non-fungible tokens that are great for things like collectibles. But there's sort of like an in-between for things like carbon credits, where they're sort of fungible and like one carbon credit is a lot like another. So you probably don't want like NFTs for them, but they're not really fungible because they're issued against different projects that may have different regimes, and so you have lots and lots of assets. Concert tickets are another thing. They're sort of fungible, but they're sort of not, because seats are different, and you don't want 0.997 of a concert ticket. Like, do we let you in, or what if we have 100 people that each have 99% of a concert ticket? Like, what do we do? And so these multi-purpose tokens can have regulatory compliance information attached to the token, but they can also have properties that are between non-fungible tokens and fungible tokens that allow you to address these other use cases without kind of bashing a square peg into a round hole.
Okay, and that was just announced today, the multi-purpose function?
I think the first announcement was either in our blog post or in my talk a couple hours ago, both of which I think were today. Yeah.
What do you think in terms of the regulatory space when it comes to things like tokenization of real-world assets and just other things that we tokenize? Do you think we're starting to see kind of progress being made on the regulatory side to enable this?
Yeah, I think big institutions that have the wherewithal to go through, even in very heavy jurisdictions like the United States, where it's very challenging, the EU, where it's challenging to launch these products, large institutions have really come to believe that there's going to be tens of trillions of dollars in real-world assets tokenized, and they don't want to let somebody else beat them to it. And so we're seeing a lot of interest from tier 1 banks and very large institutions that have said, we're going to have to figure out a way to do this. And obviously, they're going to have to be strict regulatory compliance. These probably won't be assets that anonymous accounts can hold, but you may be able to do things like borrow against them that will kind of again bridge that gap between the, because if it's completely regulated, then only people who onboard with the issuer can use them. There's really no advantage to them being on a public ledger. But we think that even those things can tie into DeFi applications in useful ways.
Right. And I just read a great article about credit unions using tokenization for loans and everything. So apparently credit unions, the regulator, he's here, and he's very open to blockchain and tokenization. So we may see it first with credit unions and then maybe larger banks?
I hope so, because there's a lot of people who don't have access to good ways to produce yield, low-risk ways to produce yield. And these types of loans, they're great for the people who borrow the money. They can be tax efficient, they can be a way to juice a little more return. That's not super exciting to me, though. What is exciting is people who might have to stuff money in their mattress will be able to provide pools of liquidity that will back these loans and get a yield that are reasonably low risk in a way that's it's like an open system that's accessible to people who are very underserved by the existing financial system. So that's exciting to me.
Right. Any other upcoming announcements from Ripple that we can talk about or that we can expect maybe at Apex coming up in June in Amsterdam?
So we have a whole bunch of announcements planned for Apex, including announcements around the stablecoin partnerships, but they'll fire me if I tell you anything now. Sorry.
Okay, so we'll just have to wait. David, any final thoughts or remarks before before we end our interview? Anything that you're really excited about?
You know, I've been really, I'm unreasonably excited about the automated market maker feature, just because that's something that's near and dear to my heart, because I've been working on trading algorithms and volatility harvesting and those kinds of things for a long time. It's exciting, you know, to see those things happen. And I'm also excited to share what I think is a coherent vision for how we can grow. Like if you look at how the internet grew, there was institutional adoption, there was government and military adoption, and that went hand in hand with sort of bottom-up adoption to make a compelling, compelling ecosystem. And I think like this vision to do that with blockchain, you know, it's just really exciting. There's been a lot of people working on the sort of bottom-up growth for a long time. It's just like, but that really only appeals to people who like are technologists, who are really willing to get their hands dirty in the tech. Mass adoption is going to take a mixture of institutional adoption and grassroots adoption. It's exciting to see like the industry kind of turning that corner.
For sure, the industry is maturing, and
Definitely.
Hopefully we'll get some friendly regulations that are clear and concise moving forward.
I hope so. It hurts me that I have to tell people like to avoid the United States when they can, but you know, things have been getting better, I think, in the last couple of months. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, David, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Same here. Great talking to you, Rachel.